Alright champs, it's a much anticipated day here in the Rumbleverse because today this video is going to be part 4 of my Glarry GP bass series in which we are making upgrade after upgrade to a bass guitar that once cost $75. In today's video, I'm going to show you a couple really awesome products and do lots of audio demos. So before we get into it, let's check out how this thing sounds right now. So guys, welcome to the channel today. If you're a regular here, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm really happy to have you, as are my fellow viewers. So go on and hit that subscribe button if you're a bass player or if you like bass and guitar related gear, because here on the Rumblin' Man YouTube channel, we cover it all. So it's your friendly neighborhood Rumblin' Man today, coming to you from Florida. And you may say, well, Rumblin' Man is the Rumbleverse in Florida. And I would say, no, the Rumbleverse is wherever I happen to be. Diet Coke. The color is what Glarry would refer to as sunset. So just for a little backstory before I talk about these products, part 1 of this series was when Glarry Musical Instruments sent me the $75 all prestigious Glarry GP P-Bass for review. And I did a full review of it with lots of demos, which you can see right here on YouTube. But then I decided not to stop there. So we did a part 2, and in the part 2, I took out the stock Glarry pickup in the bass. And with the help of my good friend Jeff, we installed just a Squier Vintage modified P pickup that I had sitting around. And we also installed some better strings. And in part 2, I was posing the question, can a $75 Glarry bass serve as a good studio bass? I was just posing the question and doing some demos. And then part 3 came out last week, and part 3 was my favorite so far because part 3, we installed a Mad Hatter Terminator system into this bass, which cleaned up the electronics, gave it some better internal working parts, really brought out the clarity and brightness in the tone that it didn't have before. It replaced the cheap electronics that came in the Glarry with excellent electronics, a great volume pot and tone pot, all of the above, and made this bass really sing. So that was part 3 last week, and today is part 4. All right, so last week, probably the last thing that I concluded the video with was, you know, this neck is real chunky. And so what I've been saying lately is from chunk machine to funk machine, all right? So when I say funk machine, I don't mean in any way that this is James Jamerson's original funk machine bass guitar from the 60s. I mean, it's kind of a funk machine of my own. Long story short, you know, I liked the bass for the most part, especially with an upgraded pickup and upgraded strings, but I did not like the neck on the Glarry bass. It was the chunkiest, most baseball bat feeling neck I have ever played on in my life. So when I had the opportunity, okay, let's do another video, let's make another upgrade, I decided to go with a brand new neck and another set of strings. So let me tell you what each one are real quick, okay? Now, if you have watched my videos over the past several years, then you know that I've demoed a lot of Rondo Music's products that they distribute, specifically the SX basses and guitars. And this is essentially the neck that you would find on an SX P bass or SX Ursa 1. Basically, all the SX necks, or at least the prominent ones, you can get them online at Rondo's website. In fact, if you want to take a look at those necks for yourself, there's a link in the description of this video where you can head over to their website right now and do that. Or, well, watch the video first, then head over to their website and do that. But I wanted a P bass neck for a P bass experience, so I went with this maple fretboard and this beautiful vintage tinted glossy maple P bass style neck. And so this is an SX neck, and I absolutely love it. I really like playing on it. I've always liked the SX basses. I've always liked playing on them. But I really do love this neck. It's just my kind of neck. I'm a big fan of maple. I think this is Canadian maple. I'm not sure, but I'm a big fan of it. I'm a big fan of gloss finish personally, so I love the vintage feel that I'm getting here. And the cool thing about this neck is, whereas, for a licensed Fender neck or a Warmoth neck, you end up paying a little more, this neck only cost $50. Now, I want to give a big shout out and a big thanks to my friend Jeff today, because Jeff installed this neck. He said the installation process was pretty easy. He had to put a shim in it, but other than that, it went right on. And then he salvaged the hardware from the original Glarry neck. So I've still got Glarry hardware on this bass and the Glarry knobs on this bass. But other than that, there's not much Glarry left in this bass, because we got this beautiful SX neck now that I love. Now, I did go with a maple fretboard, and you would say, Rumblin' Man, so why did you choose maple instead of rosewood? Because they have rosewood available as an option as well. But to me, maple fits the scenario. So let's talk for just a second about tonewoods. Okay, so in the acoustic guitar community, you hear a lot about tonewoods, maple, rosewood, Indian rosewood. Every wood can be kind of a tone wood, because the wood on your bass is always going to make a difference in the tone, all right? For instance, just like a maple fretboard is lighter in color than a rosewood fretboard, it is actually the same with the sound, okay? So, but a maple fretboard, just the material, the way that it plays, the way it sounds out, is a lighter wood in terms of tone, in terms of audio. It is a lighter tone wood and has a brighter sound than rosewood. Now, for me personally, going for a P bass, especially one that I'm going to put flats on and have kind of a funk machine, I wanted to go with a lighter tone wood. So think about this. I have plenty of guys reach out to me like, hey, Rumblin' Man, oh man, I'm putting this great P bass together. It's going to be a P bass. I got a P pickup in it, and then I'm going to have, a rosewood fretboard, and then to top it all off, I'm going to get some nickel strings. But to me, what you're doing there is you're tripling the darkness. I don't understand why people say, oh, okay, it's a 70s jazz bass, so I want to make sure it's a maple fretboard and get some really bright stainless steel strings. So it's like, okay, you're going to take something that's already really trebly and just treble it into oblivion. Same thing with P basses. Okay, so the P pickup, it depends on the P pickup, because there are some P pickups that have a really nice brightness to them. This is not one of them. But there are some that have a really nice brightness to them. However, more affordable P pickups, and even some of the nicer end P pickups, are going to be a little bit more bassy, a little bit more of a bassy pickup. So it's like, okay, so I'm going to take that bassiness there, and then I'm going to take that dark pickup, and I'm going to have a rosewood fretboard just to bring out a little more darkness. And then, as if it wasn't dark and bassy enough, I'm going to put nickel strings on it, which are like the worst thing you could put on it, because they are the warmest, darkest sounding strings I've ever played on. So it's like triple the darkness. No. You don't want to do that. You don't want to have a dark machine. You want to have a funk machine. So here's the thing. For your P bass tone, focus on this. Yes, the thump element needs to be there. You do need, the bass frequency. You do need the mid-range. But here's the thing. Focus on bringing out these two things in your P bass tone. Focus on bringing out some treble, so that you're not just playing a darkness machine, and focus on balance. Every element on the P bass that you're building or that you're going to get, they all need to balance each other out. I'm not saying that rosewood is bad on P basses or that nickel is bad on P basses. It all comes down to the parts and what else is on the bass. So for instance, I decided to go with some good balance here, okay? Because this pickup right here, it has the help of the Mad Hatter system in it, really helping it sound more like a Fender pickup. But it is kind of a bassy pickup. It's more of a low-end, Squire Vintage modified pickup. And then I decided I wanted to go with, flatwound strings. And then flatwounds are going to have a little more dead-end thump to them. And I thought, well, then we need to balance that out with some brightness, really bringing some nice brightness. So I go with a maple fretboard. So I've got, kind of a darker pickup. I've got a bright tone wood in the fretboard, and then I've got some flatwounds, which they can bring out both light and dark elements in your tone, but it's generally going to be kind of a dead and thumpy tone as the strings age. For the strings, I decided to go with flatwounds because flatwound strings and P basses just get along. They have from the get-go. They have gotten along great since the 1950s, the 1960s, and to this day, flats can be very versatile. So I am going to do some demos today. Probably not any slap playing though, because from what I hear, you can't slap on flatwounds. So a couple of the pros about flatwounds to me, for one thing, they're easier on your fingers. They have this nice smooth texture to them. And for another thing, flatwounds can give you a really funky, cool old Motown kind of sound as they age. And for another thing, flatwounds actually sound really good. They sit really well in a mix for recording. In fact, over the years of all the bass recording I ever did, some of my very favorite bass recordings that I got to play on were a jazz bass with flatwound strings. You don't believe me that they sit well in a mix? Well, let's see real quick, okay? I'm going to play to kind of a worship style track with this bass, and let's just see how these flatwounds hold up the low end of this mix. So you may say, Rumblin' Man, what flatwounds did you go with? There's so many out there. And I know that there are. And I've reviewed, a couple different sets of flatwound strings on my channel in the past, but I went with these Rotosound Monel flatwound strings, the Rotosound jazz bass strings. And I absolutely love them. I've tried a lot of flats. There's still some out there that I haven't tried yet, but I've tried a lot. And these are my favorites that I've tried so far. I like the texture to them. They have a great feel to them. They're not totally slippery and dead, and at the same time, they don't have any kind of weird stickiness to them or anything like that. They just feel great. They've got really nice grooves in them. They sound incredible. I've listened to demos like on YouTube where people did, flatwound shootouts, and to me, the Rotosounds just always sound incredible. So these are what I went with. If you've never used flatwounds before, I do recommend having them on one of your basses. They're more versatile than you might think. Because you can use them in multiple styles of music. That is until they get older and lose their sustain and deaden out a bit. Then at that point, they're kind of only really applicable to some styles of music. Some of the best and most classic, flatwound P-bass tones were in the 1950s, because my favorites were all in the 60s, when Jamerson and Dunn and those guys were playing the Motown and Stax records. That was all P-basses with flats, one finger style playing. But before that, in the 1950s, when the P-basses, first made an appearance on the scene, bass players were playing with flatwound strings, and they were mostly playing with picks. It was really before, finger funk started. A lot of bass players out there were playing with picks, and a lot of bass players had a hard time adjusting, from an upright bass to playing a bass guitar with a pick. In fact, the late Elvis Presley was even a bass thumper with a pick in the 1950s, behind the scenes. So real quick for a demo, I want to see if we can get some of that old school sound with these. I mean, they're still really new strings, so they're not going to have that deadened sound just yet, but I'm going to play with a pick and do a little palm muting, and let's see what kind of cool picked flat wound tones we can get with this bass right now. So very cool. So if you want to try flat wound strings, I absolutely recommend the Rotosound jazz bass Monel flat wound strings, and these are in a light gauge. I like them very much. I have flats on 2 of my basses. On my Gibson, I have a set of DR flats, and they're good too, but I like these Rotosounds a little better. And then for the neck, I'm absolutely loving this SX neck from Rondo Music. And if you want to check out either of these products for yourself, I've got a link in the description of this video to each one of them, where you can head over to Rondo's website, check out the necks and parts that they have. Really cool stuff. Really excellent replacement neck for a bass, in my humble opinion, because it's affordable and still nice and still a joy to play on. Absolutely love it. And then I also have a link where you can check out some Rotosound jazz bass flats as well. But you know what? I wonder, is there, Rumblin' Man, is there one more upgrade that we can make to this bass that will improve the sound just a little more? Is there one more upgrade we can make that will enhance the tone just a step further? Well, I think there is. I think we can enhance it some more, and I think it won't just take it a step further. I think it'll take it a big step further. I think this funk machine can be even clearer, even louder, even better sounding. And that is what the next video in this series, the Glarry GP series, is going to be about. So make sure you're subscribed and make sure you stay tuned. And when that does come out, I'll have a link to it above me right now. But in the meantime, until that video comes out, you can check out the other videos in this series if you haven't yet. I've got links to all of that in the description of this video. Stay here with me on the Rumblin' Man channel. We have a lot of videos like this one. If you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed. You can connect with me on social media. We have a great time, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. God bless.